Alright, I'm not going to open with the whole spiel about the state of Marvel and what the start of Phase 6 means for the entire series, but I do just want to clarify that we are in a great era for comic book movies. Sure, Brave New World was a miss, but there's a ton of reasons for that. Thunderbolts, Superman, and now Fantastic Four have fully convinced me that the future is looking bright because filmmakers are less afraid to make different movies, character-focused adventures with great acting, introducing new characters and an established world to thrust you into the action, even using a completely different universe for the characters to hammer in the fact that there isn't anyone pre-established showing up. But I don't want to talk about that too much, because ultimately, I'm already excited. Here we have it, the Fantastic Four first steps. The history of the Fantastic Four in Marvel is a rich one. They are often cited as Marvel's first family, despite only being 4 people, occasionally joined by Spider-Man. They're a name big enough to be put next to the Avengers and X-Men. Their powers have inspired countless different interpretations and adaptations, most notable probably being Pixar's The Incredibles, which is a masterpiece by the way, and if it had the animation fidelity of its sequel, I would legitimately have no complaints about it. The only way to describe our core 4 is, well, fantastic. Their origins and personalities mostly stay consistent throughout their history, although some writers definitely try their hardest to slander the good name of Reed I Love My Wife Richards. I mean, them being the first characters to be added post-launch to Marvel Rivals is a huge indicator to how much hype they can garner. It's kinda crazy actually that we've had the same amount of Avengers movies as Fantastic Four movies now. Wow. Discounting the one that never came out, of course. But I've actually been studying up on my F4 lore recently. F-lore, if you will. And by that, I mean watching the 2000s movies. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but there will be relevant comparisons when I'm talking about the characters. Bottom line is the first one is actually not that bad, and has some good emotional moments, and some amazing reaction gifs. Rest in peace to Julian McMahon and Jessica Alba, you deserved so much better. I'm very glad you didn't quit acting. The second one is a bit of a nothing burger for a full hour, and then the stakes are not portrayed very well, frankly. Cool Silver Surfer performance though. And I mean, that's all the Fantastic Four movies before this one. Oh. Okay, so I'm going to get baby bottle reacted here, but I actually saw Fantastic in cinemas when I was like 9. And I was terrified of Doctor Doom because he blew up a guy's head inside of a hazmat suit he was wearing. Anyway, this movie fucking blows. The body horror angle is an interesting one to take considering how integral it is when it comes to Ben's story especially, but also partially with the rest of the gang. However, the way it's handled is really bad. The characters are underwritten, the acting isn't particularly great, and in a movie with Michael B. Jordan, that's a fucking sin. Go watch Sinners. But a lot of parts of this movie are depressing and unsatisfying in unnecessary ways. Taking "it's clobbering time" and turning it into something Ben's brother would say before beating him.
Oh my god.
Come on man, no one wants to see that. 2000s, 2010 superhero movies going full Dark Knight is always so stupid to look back on. But why was Henry Cavill aura farming after a courtroom exploded? Why was James Marsden saying yellow spandex like a slur? And why is the Thing's thing out?
Good grief, he's naked!
But yeah, the other movies aren't great adaptations. That's all I can really say. Hype was high for First Steps because not only is the cast stacked, but the trailers actually looked pretty promising. We're in a comic book movie era where directors are actually using colour, and it's so helpful in making cool and engaging worlds to immerse yourself in. The characters pop off the screen just like off the page. And while some people were skeptical about the casting, mainly Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, especially with him keeping his iconic mustache since he hates his clean-shaven look in Wonder Woman 1984, I'm not kidding, that is genuinely the reason why he refuses to shave it now. Don't worry Pedro, we were hating on everything else in that movie too.
Max Lord, you're putting yourself and everyone else in grave danger.
Nobody was focusing on your upper lip. And of course, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm. Now, I've only seen Joseph Quinn in Stranger Things and A Quiet Place Day 1, and he was great in both of those, even if their quality can be debated. So I figured he might pull off the character well. And once I heard those interviews with him reflecting on Johnny's character as the womanizer, and how that can be translated into today's era, oh yeah, I knew he was cooking. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to say that the casting in this movie is fantastic. Not one actor did I think was doing a bad job or diverging too far from the character they were playing. Vanessa Kirby nails the kind and caring motherly figure of Sue Storm, as well as her confident and independent side of the family. With her starting up the Future Foundation and being the absolute backbone of any load she has to bear, Sue actually ended up being my favourite character, which completely surprised me, as usually Ben is my favourite of the four. Speaking of the thong, I think Eben Moss Backrack, is it Backrack or Batchrack? Okay, yeah. Eben Moss Backrack plays a really fun to watch Ben that feels like such a kindly uncle. Very much a gentle giant who likes to help out the people and maybe show off for the kids that think he's cool. I love all of his interactions with the family and that, like Sue, they show his skill set outside of his powers. He gets a scene in here where he proves why he was chosen for the astronaut mission. And it's not because he's Reed Richards' best friend, it's because he's a skilled ass pilot, giant hands and all. His banter with Johnny is also perfect. My ideal dynamic compared to the previous movies. You really feel like they have a love, jokingly hate relationship with each other, which makes them comfortable enough to trade jabs and laugh about them. It's a real brotherly relationship and their acting knocks it out of the park. Compare this to the 2005 and 2015 movies and you have Johnny just kind of being a dick, which made things kind of unlikable and awkward to watch, especially in Fun 4-Stick. I mean, come on. But I truly love how much they rely on each other and have points where they save each other from dying. It's like he says in Marvel Rivals, "Family comes first, even when it's Johnny." My one complaint about this specific portrayal of Ben is his voice. Now when the original trailer dropped, I was a total Ben head. He was my definitive favourite F4 member, and I wasn't too shocked by him not having a super thick accent or gravelly vocal cords. But after watching the Michael Chiklis Fantastic Four movies, and especially putting a lot of time into playing him in Rivals, I kinda miss it, man. Okay, actually, I'm gonna lay my cards on the table. I fucking love New York Italian accents. I think they are great for endearing me to characters, and work so well with my favourite types of comedy. So it's really a shame when you see most interpretations of Mr. Grimm here sounding like a character from Forget About It, and he sounds more like Troy Baker.
Psh, the cops can't catch this! Later, you bourgeois sucker!
I mean the sheer dopamine that hit me when I first heard, "It's clobbering time!" from the Rivals announcement. Puts me to tears, man. But that's not a huge issue. No shade at all to Eben. I can't wait to see more of Ben. Oh, and remember what I said about being on board with Joseph Quinn? Completely correct call. He gave Johnny such a huge glow up. Not only is he the most likable and charismatic Johnny, embodying his fiery personality and mixing in his lackadaisical humor comparative to the crazy situations he gets in, with the inescapable horniness and endless heroism that surrounds him. But there are several points in the movie where he does extremely selfless acts without anyone else's input, and like, wow, that's Johnny. He's a risk taker. He walks the fine line between being brave and being stupid. And Joseph Quinn pulls it off expertly. This is a Johnny that sometimes makes fun of Ben and Reed, but it's clear he doesn't do it out of malice, and really just loves them enough to feel comfortable in knowing them. Also, there's a really cute recurring bit where he only refers to Herbie as Herbert, and strokes his head every time Herbie does something. I think that's adorable, and I love it so much. The best detail about Johnny, however, is that he's actually smart. Every other Fantastic Four movie has kind of just had him as Sue's cocky brother and not really explained why he goes on the space mission with Reed and Sue, who are scientists, and Ben, who is a pilot. Now, I know in the comics the original expedition was basically caused by Johnny sneaking out and Reed and Sue just deciding to follow him and go early, but the movies don't do that. So they make Johnny smart in different areas. He's not a scientist, but he's dedicated and clearly has ties to studies in history and anthropology. God, Korekyo Shinguchi would hate me for fucking up that pronunciation. And all because he wants to bang the Silver Surfer. Okay, yeah, I can't blame him. Anyway, Marvel, please don't fumble this. And let Joseph Quinn, Johnny meet Tom Holland Pete. It would be such a good pairing. Also off topic, but I'd really like to see the Phantom Zone storyline done in the MCU. I think it would be so emotional, and the only characters in the MCU that really need to focus on, that are already introduced, are the four, of course, and Spidey to get the biggest emotional beats. But whatever, added to the list of things Marvel won't let me write. Our final Fantastic Four member, though, is Reed Richards, played by media darling and genuinely incredible person, Pedro Pascal. People were skeptical about this one. They were worried that he'd just end up being Pedro, that Reed shouldn't have a mustache. Mad that he is in everything now. And first off, watch more movies. Yes, he's in Star Wars, and Game of Thrones, and The Last of Us, and Marvel, and I guess Gladiator 2, but I know y'all aren't watching The Materialists. There's plenty of other movies that also deserve your attention, and Pedro isn't in them, so stop whining. Second off, an actor being in a lot of big-name franchises isn't anything to be annoyed at, as long as they're a good actor. Pedro Pascal doesn't just play himself. His portrayals of Joel, Reed, Din, and Oberyn are all extremely different characters. He talks differently, acts completely differently, because he's a good fucking actor, and that's why he's being cast. And I can safely say he busts his ass in this movie. Pedro delivers a Reed Richards that is a gigantic nerd riddled with anxiety, most likely taken from his own real-life experiences with it, which he has talked about at great length, and is the reason he is often seen holding hands or being comforted by his co-stars, who consent to said interactions. Why am I even weighing in on this, honestly? It's such a dumb smear campaign, and I legitimately wouldn't be surprised if the rumors were true and Joanne was behind everything. I feel bad for the mold in our house having to live with her. Anyway, this is by far my favorite interpretation of Reed in a movie so far. Not much competition, I know, the rest I either remember through Say That Again, and just being a cook. The way Reed talks is exactly how I think he would. His voice is slightly heightened in pitch to the point where he always sounds curious, and for a man who canonically stretches his brain to have more wrinkles to store more information, which is the reason he is the smartest man in the world, he would be curious, inquisitive, ready to learn more at all times. This pairs perfectly with his anxiety since he spends a lot of the second act brainstorming and acting on strategies to solve conflict. His brain goes to every single possible outcome, even the worst ones, but he tries to keep those to himself. And even if he does, nobody can read Reed better than Sue. Their relationship was honestly adorable. I love wife guys in media, Alan Wake, Isaac Clarke, Felix from Encanto, James Sunder. Okay, maybe not him, but the way Reed always calls Sue his baby, his love, it really shows how devoted he is to her without having a giant speech about how much he loves his wife. Although if I was married to Vanessa Kirby, I would probably write a different one each night and recite it to her while she tries to sleep. Reed's interpersonal conflicts also really work for me in this movie. They're not the core focus of his character or anything and only get a few scenes, but it's something that I really appreciate focusing on because I feel like past interpretations of him always make him either egotistical and self-absorbed or a workaholic who neglects his family life. And while Reed Richards' brain never stops thinking about science, it never stops thinking about his wife and kids either. There's a really emotional back and forth between Reed and Sue that later blooms into a speech given by Reed about his past experiences and how they impact the people he loves, saying that he's always been different, and it pretty much canonizes that Reed Richards is autistic, which was an idea first explored in the Ultimates universe. In the worst way imaginable, might I add, but at least it is done better here. Jesus fucking Christ. I've seen a lot of people on the spectrum say this scene really resonated with them, and I'm very happy to say that this quirked up white boy has a lot more fans now that people understand who he really is, perpetuated by a great job Pedro put in. I'm happy that he's going to be a large focus moving forward, because I think his Reed is going to have a lot of fun interactions with the legacy MCU characters. My only real complaint with this character is that he uses powers pretty sparingly. There's like 2 or 3 bits with him using them for everyday activity, and then he climbs places with them. I wanted something goofy, like him stretching between 2 lampposts to try and trip up Galactus or something. But you could argue that Reed stretching his brain means that his intellect is his biggest power, and he uses that to his full extent, so sure, whatever. Okay, God, I've realized that I've dedicated a lot of time talking about the characters, but this is the Fantastic Four. That's the big part of the dynamic. People have pointed out recently that the Avengers are kind of just co-workers. And the X-Men are kind of similar in some cases. Most of the connections are through their shared traumas, of course being mutants oppressed by humans. But the Fantastic Four are a family. Family is a huge point of this movie and driven with an absolutely moving speech from Sue to the rest of the world, which was a huge highlight of the movie to me, and probably the moment I realized she was becoming my favorite. Getting these characters right was incredibly important, so I'm happy to say there's a ton of things to like about all of their portrayals. As for the non-Fantastic Four characters, I'm only really going to talk about 2. Well, 3, I guess, if you're desperate to hear my thoughts on Herbie. He's cute and has a pretty funny bit in the third act. But he's also the objective on the worst rivals map, so I will unfortunately have to put Herbie down in the Great Robot War of 2029. I'm sorry, Herbert, but you shouldn't have sided with those disgusting clankers. Anyway, now that he's out of the way, the two other prominent characters of the movie are Shalabal Silver Surfer, played by Julia Garner. Before anyone cries woke, Shalabal has existed since 1968. Stop grifting and pick up a comic book. Anyway, I completely understand Johnny's motivation to bang this woman. If I could fly, I would also pursue her to the ends of the universe. Honestly, even though I can't, I'd probably try to grab hold of her board anyway, because then she'd have to kick me off, and I'd ask.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
While I've always been a huge fan of the anti-war mindset of the male Silver Surfer and how his character is presented in the comics as not understanding human conflict, since that paired with his role as Galactus' herald is always a stark contrast that really gets you thinking about the morality of Galactus' role, and how, as a constant of the world, is it truly fair for him to exist and end entire planets? But I think Shalabal works better for this story. I don't want to elaborate too much on why, but Julia Garner knocks it out of the park in a lot of her scenes. I love her dynamic with Johnny, and how he's not just lusting over her, he's genuinely interested in her character and history and motivations for serving under Galactus. Plus, she does spark some of the best jokes in the movie between Ben and Johnny. Finally, we have the man, the myth, the guy you absolutely want on your side in a hot dog eating contest, the hungry Galactus. It is genuinely going to be hard for me to discuss Galactus for long because I have barely any notes. He's actually perfect. His suit is practical, and I believe his scenes were filmed with Ralph Ineson walking through a miniature city, and that is so fun. I bet he was having the time of his life. His voice is perfect, and probably the reason he was chosen for the role. He has such a booming presence that really does feel intimidating, but not necessarily scary. He's not trying to terrify the people of Earth. He doesn't care about that. Ultimately, he's not really trying to cause it either. I still can't get over how awesome his suit looks, especially when we see it compared to Johnny flying around like an insect, and how effortlessly Galactus can take out entire chunks of buildings. My favorite part though? His eyes. They swap between this purple, piercing stare that almost humanizes him, until he switches them to glowing, autonomous eyes, showing his impersonal approach to the pruning of Earth. It's not out of malice, or even pity. It just is. Galactus is doing what he has done and will continue to do. Take a huge fucking bite out of entire planets. His first appearance is so wonderfully woven into the second act of the movie, and it kicks off what is being called one of the best sequences in the entire MCU. And honestly, I kind of agree. It's such a thrilling scene that incorporates great aspects from everyone's characters, but most of all the phasing nature of the Silver Surfer. She steals the show here, and I think everything with her character and Galactus, I honestly just couldn't complain about at all. Okay, that's all the characters that matter. Thank God I can finally talk about something else. First off, oh my god, the retro-futuristic Earth 828 is gorgeous and ripped straight off a comic book. The technology that looks so 60s but modern nonetheless, the Fantastica, the entire vibe of the Baxter building, I am in love with how immersive it is and just how much it makes sense. I love that they went with a new universe for this movie to solidify that there won't be any crossovers for now. It was really refreshing and pairs perfectly with Superman, which was another unapologetic comic book movie. People keep pitting these two against each other, and while I definitely think one is better, I am perfectly fine with being happy we have two cakes this summer. I think the opening montage of this movie is absolutely wonderful. Speedrunning 4 years of the Fantastic Four, their expeditions, introducing the characters, and showing them keeping humanity safe is just peak. There's nothing else I can use to describe it. It really works for me, and got me smiling in my seat. The small little in-universe details like the Fantastic Four toys and the show are delightful, and a lot of the bits and jokes related to them had my theatre laughing. The humour honestly really worked for me. It's so earnest and cute and works with the character relationships in great ways. While I do like the idea of jumping 4 years ahead and showing us a pre-established Fantastic Four, I do think there are some issues that come with that. Johnny, Sue, and Reed are fine, of course. They grow accustomed to their powers, and we get to see them using them in cool ways to benefit their everyday. Or, if you're Johnny, get laid. Which is probably his everyday anyway, actually. But Ben is ironically the one who suffers the most from this. My favorite part of the 2005 Fantastic Four movies is Michael Chiklis' Ben Grimm. The struggle he goes through after turning into what he believes is a monster. One with rocks to skin who can't ever go back to being normal again. It's a really depressing situation that is easy to sympathize with. Everything changes and suddenly you have a huge burden to bear. People think you're different. Scary, your life can't be the same anymore. I don't think redoing this fully was in order, but it saddens me to see that by far the best interpretation of this character was done in a movie that didn't really get the other characters right. And then we get a movie that gets the other characters right. And yet we don't get enough screen time for the fourth member, who previously has had amazing portrayals. Or a amazing portrayal. I still like Ben a lot in the final product of First Steps, but part of me was remembering the scene with the wedding ring and just how heartbreaking that was, and wondering where any of Ben's emotional crux was in this movie. There are scenes in the trailer that imply this was intended. There was one of him looking longingly at a recording of the space mission. He was talking to Reed Richards, and you can see a look in his eyes as if he wants to go back to that point when he was human again. Another of him staring out at a beach. And we see him grow a small relationship with this nice teacher lady from Yancey Street, where Ben grew up. And this is cool, but I would have liked to see a bit more of it, and the fact that it isn't a part highlights my key problem with this movie. According to Vanessa Kirby, Shackman filmed like 4 hours worth of scenes.
Oh, we got a whole bunch of scenes we can
Kevin's
lift off.
yeah, exactly. Kevin's in the building.
Tons for you, dude.
It's about 4 hours of scenes.
Yeah.
This was then cut into a sub 2-hour movie, and I'm not saying nothing should have been cut. But when the best shot from the trailers is missing from the final product, when it's in a scene that was very, very important to the movie, what the hell is going on here? I genuinely think if this movie was 20 to 30 minutes longer, it could reach an incredibly high score, fleshing out Ben's self-image problems more. Look, he doesn't need to be extremely depressed because it is something he's dealt with over the years, so surely some of it would have worn down by now. But maybe he doesn't like how he's seen by the public. That being an otherworldly rock person makes them think he can be used for entertainment, and they'll never see the person beneath. Have him connect with his lady friend with that. The cut content really gets me down too because they removed the entire interview scene where Reed talks about having family dinner at 7 PM. The speech about before they went up into the rocket, talking about how it impacted them, when in reality it just solidified their personalities into powers. Reed is always stretching himself thin with anxiety, trying to cope with his job and his family. Johnny is a fiery and passionate trailblazer, leaving a wake in his path. And Ben is a solid rock anyone can hold on to and rely on in the time of need. While Sue gets caught in the middle of all this. In all of the angst, the heartbreak, the stress, she can feel invisible. But she's still always there to prop up her family and be another layer of warmth and support, a safety net to protect them. Hearing it in the trailer sounded so emotional, and I wanted it to be a part of the movie. Hell, John Malkovich was meant to be in it, and all of his scenes were cut, which is crazy to me. I know Shackman said that he won't release the director's cut because VFX will be expensive, but I still wish we could see it. It would fix me, for real, for real. Honestly though, even if Ben was hit the most by all of the edits, seeing him go to a synagogue made me extremely happy. I'm not religious myself, but I do understand exactly how representation matters. And there are remarkably few Jewish superheroes I can name off the top of my head. Ben Grimm, of course, Mark Spector, and Kitty Pryde being the big three that come to mind. So I hope that now, and in the future, we get more scenes of our boy connecting with the community like that. I always loved the line in the McKay run that the Avengers aren't a fan of Mark after Age of Khonshu. But Ben Grimm still sends him Hanukkah cards. It's very sweet and shows exactly the kind of guy he is. Overall, there isn't much more I can say about Fantastic Four: The First Steps. It's a wonderful reimagining of the Fantastic Four story and perfectly characterizes our core four and the two primary antagonistic forces of the movie. My only real complaints are that there wasn't more of what I was given, and if I hadn't watched any trailers, I might have rated this higher. To be honest though, the more I've been talking about this, the more I realized how much I enjoyed this movie. It was delightful. It really made me love the Fantastic Four in a way I never thought I would. I mean, Sue Storm is now my favorite of the four, and I'm very glad all of them are being respected in different ways. Surely nothing can come between the great writing and the bond these four have, right? I can't wait for the next appearance to be another well-written adventure. Enough stalling though. I'm going to happily finish this off with a score that I will admit was the lesser when I started writing this script. I'm going to give this absolutely fantastic movie an 8.5 out of 10. With Thunderbolts and this, I'd like to say I'm extremely excited for the future of the MCU. But I'm also afraid this is just the blissful calm before the storm. Since on the horizon, doomsday is coming.
To ocean green where shadows creep, and Bowie said I should wait indeed. An artist dying for his art to